Were medieval queens just pretty faces, waiting in towers for knights in shining armor? Did they simply pop out royal babies and embroider tapestries while their kings battled and decreed? Think again. From the fog-shrouded castles of England to the sun-baked courts of Byzantium, women of royal bloodlines weren't just queens. They were strategists, regents, warriors, and power brokers. They deposed husbands, raised armies, forged empires, and shaped the very destiny of nations. Between the 5th and 15th centuries, prepare to have your history books rewritten. Number 1. Urraca of León and Castile. Urraca of León and Castile, ruling in the 12th century, had a reign that was less of a gentle sway and more of a tempest. Born in 1081, she was the first queen regnant of León and Castile, meaning she ruled in her own right, not just as a king's wife. This alone set her apart. When her father, Alfonso VI, died in 1109, Urraca inherited the crowns, a decision that shocked many patriarchal nobles. She was 30 years old, a widow with a young son, Alfonso Raymondez, who would later become Alfonso VII. Her first major challenge was marriage. Her father had arranged for her to marry Alfonso, the first of Aragon, known as the Bachelor. The idea was to unite the Christian kingdoms of Spain against the Muslim South. Sounds good on paper, right? Wrong. This marriage was a disaster, turning quickly into a bitter power struggle. Urraca was not content to be a queen consort, a figurehead in her own kingdom. She was the rightful ruler of León and Castile, and she intended to exercise that power. Her new husband, Alfonso of Aragon, had different ideas. He saw himself as the senior partner, the king of both realms, and he quickly tried to assert control over her lands and titles. The clash was immediate and brutal. Urraca refused to hand over control of her kingdoms. She was a queen regnant, and she defended her authority fiercely. The two Alfonsos, husband and stepson, frequently warred against each other, even as Urraca herself raised armies and negotiated with rebellious nobles. She was described in the Chronicle of Nigeria as valiant and prudent in many things. She used diplomacy when it suited her, pitting various factions against each other, and she wielded military force when necessary. Her court became a hub of political intrigue, with nobles constantly shifting alliances between Urraca, Alfonso I, and even her own son. One particularly telling episode involved the city of Palencia. Alfonso I of Aragon had taken control of it, but Urraca, determined to reclaim her authority, personally led a siege to retake the city. This was not a passive queen sending her generals. This was a queen on the battlefield asserting her sovereignty. She managed to secure the allegiance of powerful magnates like Pedro Foilaz de Traba, who served her faithfully through thick and thin, indicating her ability to inspire loyalty. The marriage was eventually annulled by the Pope in 1114, after years of intense conflict and open warfare between the royal couple. Even after the annulment, Alfonso I refused to relinquish the lands he had seized from Urraca's kingdom. Urraca then spent years fighting to regain her territories, engaging in skirmishes and political maneuvering. She faced constant challenges from her former husband and from her own son, who, backed by some Castilian nobles, occasionally tried to assert his claim to the throne before her time. The Annales Tilanos describes her as constantly embroiled in conflicts, a testament to her active and often aggressive pursuit of power. Despite the incessant turmoil, Urraca managed to hold onto her throne and protect her son's inheritance. She ruled for over a decade, a period marked by civil wars, yet she maintained her position as queen regnant. She appointed bishops, granted charters, and led armies performing all the traditional duties of a king. Her reign demonstrated that a woman could not only inherit a throne, but also actively defend it against formidable opponents, including a warrior husband, rebellious nobles, and even her own son. She died in 1126, leaving her son, Alfonso VII, a stable, if war-torn kingdom, proving that her power as a queen regnant was far greater than any king's during her tumultuous rule. Number 2. Berengaria of Castile. Berengaria of Castile, born in 1180, often gets overshadowed by her famous son, Ferdinand III, who went on to reconquer much of Andalusia. Yet her story is a masterclass in quiet strategic power-wielding. While she briefly reigned as queen regnant, her true impact came from her astute regency and her almost invisible hand guiding the Kingdom of Castile. Her early life was a whirlwind of royal marriages. She was briefly engaged to Conrad of Swabia, son of Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, then married to Alfonso IX of León. This marriage was politically important, aiming to unite the two major Christian kingdoms of the Iberian Peninsula. However, due to consanguinity, the fact that they were first cousins, once removed the Pope, Innocent III, eventually annulled the marriage in 1204. This left Berengaria in a precarious position, but it also opened doors. She returned to her father's court, Alfonso VIII of Castile, bringing her children, including young Ferdinand. When her father died in 1214, her 10-year-old brother Henry I ascended the throne. Berengaria, as the eldest surviving sibling and a mature, experienced woman, was naturally positioned to be his regent, but the Castilian nobility, ever eager to exploit a weak king, saw an opportunity. Álvaro Núñez de Lara, a powerful noble, seized effective control of the young king, sidelining Berengaria. This was a challenge to her power, but Berengaria didn't launch an open rebellion. Instead, she began a meticulous, patient campaign of political maneuvering. She worked to build alliances among the other nobles who were disgruntled with Lara's dominance. She maintained a calm demeanor, gathering intelligence and support, as recorded in the Chronica Latina. Wielded Castile, her moment came unexpectedly. In 1217, King Henry I died tragically in a freak accident, struck by a falling roof tile. While playing with no other direct male heirs, the crown naturally passed to Berengaria. She was now Queen Regnant of Castile. However, she knew that ruling directly would be a constant struggle against the powerful Castilian magnates who were reluctant to accept a woman as their sole monarch. She also understood that her young son Ferdinand had a strong claim, and was perhaps more palatable to the male-dominated court. In the long run, in a brilliant political move, Berengaria immediately abdicated the throne in favor of her son Ferdinand. This was not a sign of weakness. It was an act of profound strategic strength. By doing so, she sidestepped the opposition she would have faced as a queen regnant, while simultaneously ensuring her son, a direct male heir, was on the throne. More importantly, she secured her position as his most trusted advisor and de facto regent. As his mother, she effectively ruled through him, for him and over him. The De Rebus Hispaniae by Rodrigo Jiménez de Rada, a contemporary chronicler, notes her remarkable intelligence and foresight. For the next 2 decades, Berengaria was the true power behind the Castilian throne. She advised Ferdinand on everything from military campaigns to church appointments. She helped him consolidate royal power against the fractious nobility. She masterminded the crucial unification of the crowns of León and Castile when her former husband, Alfonso IX of León, died in 1230, despite Alfonso's will attempting to disinherit Ferdinand in favor of his daughters from a previous marriage. Berengaria tirelessly negotiated, used diplomacy, and leveraged her influence to ensure Ferdinand inherited the Leonese throne. She managed the kingdom's finances, fostered trade, and patronized scholars. Her letters reveal a woman deeply involved in the daily governance of the realm, making decisions that kings typically made. She never sought the spotlight, preferring to guide from the shadows, ensuring that Ferdinand's reign was successful and that royal authority was strengthened. Her quiet but firm leadership allowed her son to become one of Spain's most celebrated monarchs. But it was her strategic brilliance, her political acumen, and her willingness to cede the crown while retaining the power that truly made her reign, or rather, her son's reign, under her guidance. She wielded a power far more enduring and effective than many kings of her time. Number 3. Agnes of Poitou. Agnes of Poitou, a figure of the 11th century with an empress, and for a significant period the regent of the Holy Roman Empire. Her story is one of a foreign princess who stepped into a highly volatile political landscape and, despite immense challenges, held the reins of power for her young son. She married Emperor Henry III in 1043, becoming Empress of the Holy Roman Empire, a vast and complex dominion. When Henry III died unexpectedly in 1056, their son Henry IV was only 6 years old. This immediately thrust Agnes into the role of regent for the empire. This wasn't a simple task. The Holy Roman Empire was a patchwork of powerful duchies, bishoprics, and independent territories, all with ambitious rulers, eager to gain more power at the expense of a weak central authority. Agnes, a woman and a foreigner, faced immediate skepticism and opposition from the powerful German magnates who saw this as an opportunity to undermine imperial authority. However, Agnes had been carefully prepared. Her husband, Henry III, had involved her in imperial administration, making her familiar with the intricacies of German politics. She was known for her intelligence and piety. As regent, she made crucial decisions regarding imperial policy, land grants and church appointments. She even appointed powerful bishops to key positions, demonstrating her direct control over significant aspects of imperial governance, as noted in the Annales Altahenses Maiores. One of her initial challenges was securing the loyalty of the duchies. She made strategic concessions, granting power to some dukes in exchange for their support, a tricky balancing act. For instance, she gave Bavaria to Conrad of Carinthia and Swabia to Rudolf of Rheinfelden. Actions that were politically necessary but also ceded significant power. This shows her pragmatic approach to maintaining control, knowing when to compromise to secure the larger goal. However, her regency was far from peaceful. Powerful archbishops and secular lords resented her authority, viewing her as an impediment to their own ambitions. The most famous incident demonstrating her vulnerability, yet also her resilience, was the coup of Kaiserswerth in 1062. A group of powerful magnates, led by Archbishop Anno II of Cologne, abducted the young Henry IV from his mother's care. This was a direct challenge to Agnes's regency and imperial authority. They sailed a ship up the Rhine, inviting the young king aboard, then swiftly took him away, leaving Agnes stunned and powerless to stop them in that moment. Despite this shocking blow, Agnes did not simply retreat. She understood the power dynamics at play. While her son was now under the control of the archbishops, she continued to wield influence and negotiate. She never fully abandoned her claim to authority or her role in her son's life. Even if her direct regency was usurped, she retired to a convent shortly after the coup. But her influence didn't vanish. She continued to act as a significant advisor, especially when her son came of age and began to reclaim his own power. Her letters and interactions show her continuous engagement with the political landscape of the empire. Even in her semi-retirement, her status as Empress Dowager and the mother of the emperor gave her immense moral and social authority. She later acted as a mediator between her son, Henry IV, and the papacy during the investiture controversy, traveling to Rome and acting as a bridge between two titans. The Vita Henrici, the Fourth Imperatrix, Life of Henry IV, mentions her enduring devotion and her willingness to intercede for her son. This shows that even when not explicitly ruling her power as an influential figure, a negotiator and a political force remained. Agnes of Poitou demonstrated how a queen, even one facing a coup and forced to step back, could maintain a deep and lasting influence on the political trajectory of an empire. often wielding a subtle but profound power that shaped events more than any single king could have done alone. Number 4. Theodora. Theodora, the Empress of the Byzantine Empire in the 6th century, was no mere consort. She was a co-ruler with her husband, Emperor Justinian I. Her path to power was unconventional, to say the least, but her impact on the empire was undeniable, often eclipsing her husband's will in critical moments. Born into humble beginnings, perhaps, a bear trainer's daughter, Theodora rose through the ranks of the theater, a profession that carried a scandalous reputation in that era. Yet Justinian, deeply in love and impressed by her sharp mind, married her despite widespread opposition from the aristocracy. Once empress, Theodora quickly established her own power base. She wasn't just a pretty face in the palace. She had her own court, her own advisors, and her own agenda. The historian Procopius, though often critical of her, confirms her immense influence in his secret history, writing that Justinian could do nothing without her. She participated in state councils, met with foreign ambassadors, and issued her own decrees. Her effigy appeared on coins alongside Justinian's, a powerful symbol of co-sovereignty rarely granted to empresses. The most famous testament to her power occurred during the Nika riots of 532 AD. This was a massive uprising in Constantinople, starting in the Hippodrome and escalating into a full-blown rebellion that nearly toppled Justinian's throne. The city was in flames, and much of the Senate, along with Justinian's own generals, advised him to flee the capital for safety. They believed the situation was hopeless, that the crowd's fury could not be contained. It was Theodora who stood firm. While Justinian and his advisors were paralyzed by fear, debating escape routes, Theodora delivered a passionate and defiant speech that shifted the entire dynamic. According to Procopius's History of the Wars, she declared, "Royalty is a fine shroud," she famously stated. "If you wish to save yourself, Caesar, that is easy. There is our money, and there is the sea, and there are the ships. But as for me, I hold with the ancient saying that royalty is a fine shroud." She meant she would rather die an empress than live as a fugitive. Her courage and conviction shamed Justinian and his generals. Her words instilled in them the will to fight. Bolstered by her resolve, Justinian ordered his general Belisarius to suppress the revolt. Belisarius, along with Narses, led imperial troops into the Hippodrome and ruthlessly crushed the rebellion, saving the empire from chaos and Justinian's reign from an ignominious end. Without Theodora's unflinching resolve, Justinian would likely have fled, and the Byzantine Empire's future would have been drastically different. Her power in that moment was far greater than any king's or general's. Beyond the singular dramatic event, Theodora's influence permeated every aspect of Justinian's rule. She was a fierce advocate for the rights of women and the poor. She passed laws that reformed marriage, curtailed forced prostitution, and granted women more rights in divorce and property ownership. She established shelters for former prostitutes, known as the Metanoia, or Repentance Monastery. She was also deeply involved in religious policy, often supporting Monophysite Christian factions, which sometimes put her at odds with Justinian's own theological leanings. Yet she often got her way. Her cunning was legendary. She was instrumental in the downfall of John the Cappadocian, a powerful and corrupt Praetorian prefect whom Justinian initially trusted. Through a clever ruse involving a fake plot and a staged confession, Theodora engineered John's arrest and exile, effectively removing a major rival to her influence. Theodora's unwavering presence, her sharp political instincts, and her sheer force of will made her an indispensable partner to Justinian. She wasn't just a queen. She was a sovereign in her own right, whose decisions and strength frequently steered the course of the Byzantine Empire more decisively than the emperor himself. Her legacy is one of a woman who defied societal norms and wielded unprecedented power, becoming one of the most powerful women in history, easily surpassing the typical authority of a king. Number 5. Matilda of England. Empress Matilda. Empress Matilda, born around 1102, is a towering figure in the 12th century, known for her relentless struggle for the English throne. The daughter of King Henry I of England and granddaughter of William the Conqueror, Matilda was destined for a life of power. She was married first to Emperor Henry V of the Holy Roman Empire, earning her the title of Empress, and later to Geoffrey Plantagenet, Count of Anjou. When her brother, William Adelin, the sole legitimate male heir, tragically drowned in the White Ship disaster in 1120, Matilda became her father's only legitimate child. Henry I, desperate to secure the succession, made his barons swear oaths to recognize Matilda as his heir. This was revolutionary for its time. England had never been ruled by a queen regnant. Upon Henry I's death in 1135, however, the oaths were largely ignored. Cousin Stephen of Blois swiftly seized the English throne, claiming it through his male lineage and strong noble support. This act ignited a devastating civil war that would last for nearly 2 decades, known as the Anarchy. Matilda, though an Anjou at the time, was not one to back down. She viewed Stephen as a usurper and dedicated her life to claiming her birthright. Matilda launched an invasion of England in 1139, supported by her half-brother Robert of Gloucester, a formidable military leader. The war was brutal and chaotic, marked by constant sieges, shifting loyalties, and widespread devastation. Matilda proved to be a resilient and determined leader. Personally involved in the strategic direction of her forces, she led her own army and established her own court in various strongholds, such as Bristol Castle, from which she issued charters and decrees, acting as the de facto ruler of the land she controlled. Her greatest triumph came in 1141. Her forces decisively defeated Stephen's army at the Battle of Lincoln, and Stephen himself was captured. This was a monumental victory. Matilda was now in a position to claim her crown. She entered London, the capital, and was prepared for her coronation. For a brief period, she was acknowledged as Lady of the English, Domina Umblorum, a clear assertion of her power. Chroniclers like William of Malmesbury detailed these events, touting her proximity to the throne. However, Matilda's strength in battle was not always matched by her political finesse. Once in London, her stern and uncompromising nature alienated many of the citizens and nobles. She was perceived as arrogant and refused to grant the Londoners the concessions they demanded. This alienated crucial support. The Londoners, along with Stephen's wife, Queen Matilda of Boulogne, quickly rallied against her. The Empress was forced to flee London, narrowly escaping capture in a daring night escape from Winchester. Despite this setback, Matilda continued the fight. For years, she maintained a strong presence in the west of England, ruling a parallel court and competing directly with Stephen for control of the kingdom. She was besieged, forced to escape across frozen rivers, and endured incredible hardship, but she never gave up her claim. She was a constant threat to Stephen's reign, forcing him to spend his rule fighting for legitimacy and control. The Gesta Stephani, a contemporary account, portrays the relentless nature of this conflict, driven by Matilda's unyielding determination. While she never officially became Queen Regnant of England, her relentless pursuit of the throne and her effective control over significant portions of the kingdom for many years demonstrate a power that fundamentally challenged and often overshadowed the reigning king. Her strategic decisions, her military leadership, and her sheer persistence forced Stephen into a defensive and often losing battle for legitimacy. Ultimately, it was her son, Henry Fitz-Empress, later Henry II, who inherited her claim and eventually secured the throne after Stephen's death, establishing the powerful Angevin dynasty. This victory was a direct result of Matilda's prolonged and unyielding struggle, proving that her power as a challenger and claimant far exceeded the stable authority of any king. Number 6. Margaret I of Denmark. Margaret I of Denmark, born in 1353, was a queen of a different caliber. She wasn't just a queen, She was the architect of an empire, the dominant force behind the unification of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden into the Kalmar Union, and effectively ruled over this vast northern dominion for decades. Her story is one of shrewd diplomacy, political mastery, and an iron will that easily outmaneuvered the men around her. Margaret was the daughter of King Valdemar, the IV of Denmark. At the age of 10, she was married to King Håkon VI of Norway, who was also claimant to the Swedish throne. This set the stage for her future ambitions. Her son Olaf was made King of Denmark in 1376 at the age of 6, with Margaret acting as regent. When Håkon VI died in 1380, Olaf inherited the Norwegian throne, making Margaret regent of both kingdoms for her son. This was her first taste of significant power, and she embraced it fully. Tragedy struck in 1387 when Olaf died suddenly without heirs. This left both Danish and Norwegian thrones vacant. Rather than succumbing to the traditional power vacuum that would follow, Margaret's political genius shone through. The Danish nobility, recognizing her exceptional competence and foresight, elected her Margareta, the all-powerful lady and master and guardian of the entire realm of Denmark, in 1388. This was an unprecedented title, effectively making her queen regnant, though she strategically avoided the formal title of queen to make her rule more palatable to the male-dominated aristocracy. She was effectively the sovereign ruler. Sweden was in chaos, suffering under the unpopular rule of King Albert of Mecklenburg. A faction of Swedish nobles, desperate for stability, appealed to Margaret for help. She seized the opportunity. In 1389, her forces decisively defeated Albert's army at the Battle of Asla. Albert was captured, and Margaret became the effective ruler of Sweden as well. Her power now stretched across the 3 Nordic kingdoms. She now ruled 3 realms. But she knew that a stable future required a clear line of succession. She adopted her great-nephew Eric of Pomerania and had him proclaimed King of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. But the true power remained with her. She ensured that Eric was formally crowned in 1397 at Kalmar, creating the Kalmar Union, a personal union of the 3 Scandinavian kingdoms under a single monarch, cementing her legacy. The Chronica Regni Gothorum records the solemnity of this event and her central role. Even after Eric's coronation, Margaret was the undisputed ruler. She oversaw the administration, conducted foreign policy, managed finances, and wielded ultimate judicial authority. Contemporary accounts consistently refer to her as the true power behind the throne. While Eric was often seen as her puppet, she reclaimed crown lands that had been lost, strengthened royal authority over the nobility, and initiated significant legal and administrative reforms. She funded her military and her reforms through shrewd taxation and by expanding royal estates, demonstrating a financial acumen rare for any ruler of her time. Margaret was a master negotiator. She navigated complex international relations, dealing with the Hanseatic League, the powerful German trading organization, and various German princes. She avoided open warfare when possible, preferring to achieve her goals through diplomacy and strategic alliances. She was even involved in the politics of Schleswig and Holstein, extending her influence further south into German territories. Her reign, though technically a regency, for much of it was a period of immense stability and growth for the Nordic region. She created a power block that lasted for over a century, a feat that no king before or after her managed to achieve on such a scale. She died in 1412, still very much in power, and her death left a huge void. Her legacy as a queen who built an empire through sheer force of intellect and will, far exceeding the authority and capabilities of any king in her time, is undisputed. Number 7. Adelaide of Burgundy. Adelaide of Burgundy, born around 931, was an empress of the Holy Roman Empire whose life was a dramatic saga of political intrigue, imprisonment, and ultimate triumph. She wielded significant power through a series of strategic marriages and, crucially, through her own intelligence and resilience, often outmaneuvering kings and claimants to secure her position and that of her descendants. Her journey began with her marriage to Lothair, II of Italy, becoming Queen of Italy. However, her husband's reign was short-lived, and he died in 950, likely poisoned. Berengaria of Ivrea, a powerful Italian noble, seized the throne and sought to legitimize his claim by forcing Adelaide to marry his son, Adalbert. Adelaide, however, fiercely resisted this coerced marriage, understanding that it would undermine her own status and any claim her deceased husband's lineage might have had. Her refusal led to her imprisonment. She was held captive in a castle on Lake Garda, a desperate situation for a young queen, but Adelaide was no damsel in distress. She managed a daring escape in 951, reportedly with the help of a priest who dug a tunnel, and fled to the safety of Canossa Castle, controlled by the loyal bishop, Adelaide. This act of defiance and escape demonstrated her indomitable spirit and her refusal to be a pawn in the schemes of powerful men. From Canossa, Adelaide sent an urgent plea for help to Otto I, the powerful German king. Otto, eager to extend his influence into Italy and seize the Italian crown, responded swiftly, came to Italy, crushed Berengaria's forces, and in a stroke of political brilliance, married Adelaide himself in Pavia in 951. This union was immensely significant. It legitimized Otto's claim to the Italian throne and, more importantly, paved the way for the restoration of the Holy Roman Empire, with Otto being crowned emperor in 962. Adelaide became Empress, a title that would become intrinsically linked with her as Empress. Adelaide was a crucial partner to Otto I. She was highly educated, fluent in Latin, and a patron of the church. She traveled extensively with Otto, participating in imperial councils and acting as his trusted advisor. Her influence was subtle but profound. She leveraged her connections within the church and her own diplomatic skills to further imperial interests. The Vita Adelheidis Imperatricis by Odilo of Cluny. Her contemporary biographer highlights her piety, intelligence, and her active role in political life. After Otto I's death in 973, their son, Otto II, became emperor. Adelaide's influence continued, though not without challenges. Otto II's Byzantine wife, Theophanu, was a powerful and ambitious woman, in her own right, leading to some friction between the two empresses. However, Adelaide maintained her position as Empress Dowager and retained significant estates and political sway. True power re-emerged when Otto II died prematurely in 983, leaving a 3-year-old son, Otto III, as emperor. This plunged the empire into a regency crisis. Initially, Theophanu acted as regent, but upon her death in 991, Adelaide stepped up. Despite her age, she took on the full responsibilities of regent for her grandson. She effectively governed the vast Holy Roman Empire for several years, from 991 to 995, until Otto III came of age. During her regency, Adelaide proved herself to be a highly capable ruler. She appointed powerful figures to key positions, managed imperial finances, settled disputes among warring nobles, and maintained the stability of the empire during a vulnerable period. She was a skilled negotiator and a firm hand in governance, earning the respect of the magnates. Her actions during this period were those of a seasoned monarch, ensuring the continuity of the Ottonian dynasty. Adelaide of Burgundy was not just a queen who married powerful kings. She was a survivor, a strategist, and a regent who consistently demonstrated her ability to navigate treacherous political waters. Her personal resilience, her clever alliances, and her direct exercise of authority during critical regencies meant that her power often surpassed and certainly solidified the reigns of the kings she served. Number 8. Isabella of France. Isabella of France, born around 1295, earned the chilling nickname She-Wolf of France a testament to her fierce determination and willingness to seize power by any means necessary. While she was Queen Consort of England, her story is one of a queen who utterly dominated and eventually deposed her king, effectively ruling England with her lover for several years. Isabella was married to King Edward II of England in 1308. It was a political marriage meant to secure peace between England and France. However, the marriage was deeply troubled. Edward II was openly dismissive of Isabella, lavishing favor and wealth upon male favorites. Like Piers Gaveston and Hugh Despencer, the younger, often at the expense of his queen, and the powerful English nobility, Isabella, a proud and intelligent woman, was increasingly humiliated and alienated by her husband's conduct and his disregard for her rights and dignity. She endured the stripping of her lands and revenues and the imprisonment of her French attendants. The breaking point came when Despencer, the younger, a greedy and arrogant man, gained complete control over Edward II, effectively running the kingdom and persecuting those who opposed him, including many powerful nobles. Isabella, seeing her own power diminished and her position precarious, became a fierce opponent of Despencer, and, by extension, her own husband. In 1325, Isabella returned to her native France on a diplomatic mission. She was ostensibly there to negotiate peace with her brother, King Charles IV of France, but she had a much grander plan. While in France, she refused to return to England unless Despencer was removed from power. This was a direct defiance of her husband, but she had the support of the French king and increasingly many exiled English nobles who flocked to her side. It was in France that she openly took Roger Mortimer, an exiled English baron who had been imprisoned by Edward II and escaped as her lover and political ally. Together, Isabella and Mortimer became the nucleus of an invasion force. They gathered support from English exiles, discontented nobles, and even received financial backing from foreign powers. This was an unprecedented act, a queen consort openly rebelling against her king. In September 1326, Isabella and Mortimer launched their invasion of England. Their forces landed in Suffolk, and almost immediately the kingdom rallied to their side. Edward II's regime, hated by the populace and nobility alike, crumbled with astonishing speed. The Despensers were captured and brutally executed, their deaths cheered by the crowds. Edward II himself was captured trying to flee. Isabella was now the undisputed power in England. She had achieved what no queen before her had successfully invaded her own kingdom and overthrown her husband. Parliament was convened, and through a combination of coercion and popular sentiment, Edward II was formally deposed in January 1327. His abdication was forced, and his 16-year-old son, Edward III, was proclaimed king. However, the true power rested with Isabella and Mortimer. They ruled as regents for the young king, but in practice they controlled all aspects of government. Isabella, with Mortimer as her chief minister and lover, was the de facto ruler of England. She sat in council, issued commands, and made decisions that shaped the kingdom. The Flores Historarum details her triumphant return and assumption of authority. Her rule was initially popular, but the public quickly grew tired of Mortimer's arrogance and the enormous wealth he accumulated. Rumors also persisted about Edward II's fate. He died in captivity in September 1327, likely murdered on Isabella and Mortimer's orders, though the precise circumstances for England lasted for 3 years. Her power was absolute, far exceeding anything her deposed husband had ever wielded. But her son, King Edward III, was coming of age. In 1330, a mere 3 years after his accession, Edward III, determined to assert his own authority, launched a daring coup. With a small group of loyal knights, he stormed Nottingham Castle, where Isabella and Mortimer were staying. Mortimer was captured, tried, and executed for treason. Isabella's power was broken, and she was placed under house arrest for the remainder of her life, though treated with respect as the Queen Mother. Isabella of France stands as a chilling but undeniable example of a queen who, driven by humiliation and ambition, wielded more power than her king, deposing him and ruling in his stead. Her story is a stark reminder that in the medieval world, power was not always solely the domain of men. Number 9. Blanche of Castile. Blanche of Castile, born in 1188, was a French queen who became one of the most formidable regents in medieval European history. She navigated complex political landscapes, faced down rebellions, and secured the stability of the French monarchy during a crucial period, leaving a legacy of strength and shrewd governance that far surpassed the typical power of a queen consort. Blanche was the granddaughter of Eleanor of Aquitaine and married the future Louis VIII of France in 1200. She was known for her intelligence, piety, and strong will. Even as queen consort, she was involved in court politics and advised her husband. However, her true moment to shine came in 1226 when Louis VIII died suddenly, leaving their 12-year-old son, Louis IX, later Saint Louis, as the new king. This immediately thrust Blanche into the role of regent. Many powerful French nobles, tired of strong Capetian monarchy, saw the young king's minority as an opportunity to reclaim their feudal independence and weaken the crown. They formed a formidable coalition, led by powerful figures like Peter Mauclerc, Duke of Brittany, and Raymond VII of Toulouse, who actively rebelled against the crown. Blanche met this challenge head or delegate blindly. She personally took charge of the military campaigns, raising armies, negotiating truces, and leading sieges. Her contemporary, Matthew Paris, noted her womanly courage and strategic abilities. She famously led her troops to victory in 1227 at the Siege of Belém, a significant victory that demonstrated her military acumen. She also personally marched on Nantes in 1229 to suppress rebellious nobles. Her approach was a masterful blend of firmness and diplomacy. She did not hesitate to use force when necessary, but she also knew when to offer concessions or forge strategic alliances. She cultivated loyalty among royalist nobles and exploited divisions among the rebels. She even negotiated directly with foreign powers. Her diplomatic skills were particularly evident in her successful conclusion of the Treaty of Paris in 1229, which ended the Albigensian Crusade and integrated the wealthy county of Toulouse into the French royal domain. A massive gain for the crown. Beyond military and political challenges, Blanche also faced personal attacks and slander from those who resented her power. Rumors were spread about her morality, but she consistently demonstrated unwavering devotion to her son and the kingdom. She was a strict but loving mother, educating Louis IX in the principles of good governance and piety, ensuring he was prepared to rule. She instilled in him the strong moral compass that would later earn him sainthood. Blanche's regency lasted for 8 years, until Louis IX was old enough to rule independently in 1234. However, even after Louis assumed full power, Blanche continued to wield immense influence. She remained her son's most trusted advisor, and he relied heavily on her judgment. She served as regent again, briefly, when Louis IX departed on the Seventh Crusade in 1248, once more demonstrating her indispensable role in the stability of the kingdom. She maintained the kingdom's finances, ensured peace, and continued to pursue policies that strengthened royal authority. Her reign as regent was critical for the Capetian monarchy. She not only preserved the kingdom from disintegration during a period of weakness, but actively strengthened it. She secured royal control over new territories, crushed aristocratic rebellions, and fostered a period of relative peace and prosperity. She ensured that Louis IX inherited a stable and powerful kingdom, setting the stage for one of France's most celebrated reigns. Blanche of Castile's power was not just in her role as regent. It was in her active, decisive, and highly effective governance that steered France through turbulent waters. She exercised the full authority of a monarch, often exceeding the capabilities and decisiveness of many kings of her time. Her strength, intelligence, and unwavering commitment to the crown truly made her a sovereign power in her own right. Number 10. Eleanor of Aquitaine. Eleanor of Aquitaine, born around 1122, was perhaps the most iconic and powerful queen of the Middle Ages. Her story is one of astonishing longevity. Immense wealth, 2 royal marriages, and a relentless pursuit of power and influence that saw her dominate the political landscape for over 60 years, often outmaneuvering kings and challenging the very fabric of monarchical authority. Eleanor was no mere consort. She was the Duchess of Aquitaine and Gascony in her own right, a vast and wealthy territory in southwestern France, larger than the King of England's own domains. This made her one of the most powerful women in Europe from birth. Her first marriage was to Louis VII of France in 1137, making her Queen of France. She brought her vast duchy with her, significantly enhancing the French crown's power. She participated in the Second Crusade alongside Louis, traveling to the Holy Land, an unusual and bold move for a queen. However, the marriage was strained, partly due to a lack of male heirs and significant personality clashes. Eleanor, strong-willed and independent, found Louis pious and rather dull. Her strong character clashed with his more monastic inclinations. This led to an annulment in 1152, a shocking event that sent ripples across Europe. Within weeks of her annulment, Eleanor, still Duchess of Aquitaine, married Henry Plantagenet, who was Count of Anjou and Duke of Normandy, and soon to be King Henry II of England. This marriage created the vast Angevin Empire, stretching from Scotland to the Pyrenees, with Eleanor's Aquitaine as its jewel. She became Queen of England in 1154. This rapid remarriage was a calculated political move, securing her own position and aligning her immense lands with a rising power. As Queen of England, Eleanor was initially a key partner to Henry II. She played an active role in governance, traveled widely with him, and gave birth to 8 children, including the future kings Richard the Lionheart and John. She established her own court in Poitiers, in her native Aquitaine, which became a celebrated center of culture and chivalry, attracting poets and troubadours. However, the powerful personalities of Eleanor and Henry II eventually clashed. Henry's open infidelities and his attempts to curb her independent authority over Aquitaine led to a profound rift. In 1173, Eleanor famously supported her sons, Henry the young king, Richard and Geoffrey, in a major rebellion against their father. This was an astonishing act, a queen actively instigating and participating in a war against her own husband. She was captured by Henry II's forces and imprisoned for 16 long years, largely confined to various English castles. Even from her imprisonment, Eleanor's influence persisted. When Henry II died in 1189, her favorite son, Richard the Lionheart, ascended the throne. His first act as king was to release his mother, Eleanor. She was now a vigorous 67-year-old and immediately resumed her position as a dominant political force. During Richard's long absences on crusade and later during his captivity in Germany, Eleanor effectively ruled England as regent. She issued royal decrees, managed finances, raised the enormous ransom required to free Richard, and suppressed rebellions against the crown. She was a skilled diplomat, traveling to Germany to negotiate Richard's release and securing oaths of loyalty. Her letters from this period show her actively managing the kingdom, appointing officials, and making crucial decisions. The Itinerarium Regis, Ricardi, a chronicle of Richard's crusade, frequently mentions her crucial support and political activities. When Richard died in 1199, Eleanor, now in her late 70s, actively campaigned for her youngest son, John, to succeed him over the claim of Arthur of Brittany, her grandson. She traveled across France, securing support for John, demonstrating her unparalleled political network and influence. She continued to advise John for years, even negotiating important treaties like the Treaty of Le Goulet with the King of France in 1200. Eleanor of Aquitaine lived to be over 80, dying in 1204. Her life was an extraordinary testament to female power in the medieval world. She was not only a queen, but a sovereign in her own right, a military strategist, a diplomat, a patron of the arts, and a political schemer who, through her vast inherited wealth, her too royal more direct authority, and influenced more direct authority, and influenced more significant. Her power was personal, political, and persistent, setting her apart as truly unique in medieval history.